This dress is such an easy sewing project. The only thing that takes a little bit of patience is this neckline binding and the straps. But if you are friends with iron, then it's not that bad at all. The pattern for this dress is meant for pretty stretchy fabrics. For example, this orange fabric is both stretchy and firm, so it does have a light shapewear function. Even when I tie the straps tighter, it does give a bit of push-up. If you don't want this tighter feeling or you have any doubts about the stretchiness of your fabric, feel free to use 1 to 2 sizes larger than you normally would. To keep things super simple, I didn't add any plastic or metal details to regulate the length of straps. Instead, I made the straps longer with an idea that I can tie them in a bow on the shoulders, or I can simply tie them in a knot and let them hang. Maybe this is too much of length, so I will simply cut them shorter. This pattern comes in 2 lengths, and you can make it as a maxi dress or you can make it as a knee-length dress. As an idea, you can also make it as a slip dress to wear under other transparent dresses. I'm going to use the Naya dress pattern, which you can find in our Etsy or online store. The links are down in the description. There are 2 print files, one is for printing at a copy shop and the other one works perfect with the regular printers. There are only 5 paper pattern pieces that you need to assemble and cut out. Okay, basically 2 larger ones and 3 that are for neckline binding and straps. Here you can see the line that indicates the knee length option. The thicker line is the hem allowance. But of course you can make it in any length you want, as a mini or make it even as a top. You will need a jersey fabric with at least 50% of stretch. Or, as I said, if you feel your fabric isn't stretchy enough, use the pattern 1 to 2 sizes larger. You can use a single jersey or rib knits, anything that is stretchy enough. You will also need matching threads. I also highly recommend to use stretch or jersey needle for your sewing machine. The regular needle can make holes in jersey fabrics, and from my experience, even bigger problem is that the regular needle is skipping stitches. This time I will use a twin needle for the hem. If you don't have it, I have added a video in the description with an alternative way how to do a hem that looks pretty similar. I will use a serger for side seams and hem, but if you don't have it, don't worry, you can use a few sewing machine stitches instead. I have added an additional video about those sewing machine stitches in the description as well. Let's begin by cutting the fabric. Notice that I'm not using the regular fold where fabric is folded on half. Instead, I am folding both edges and the width is the same as this dress on the widest part. This helps to save a lot of fabric. Don't forget to mark the placement for straps at the back. There is a notch on the pattern and this time I will not cut it because the neckline binding will go over it. Instead, I will mark a pretty long line with my marker. Lay the front and back panels with the right sides facing each other. Pin the side seams. Always start pinning from the up towards down, because if you have accidentally cut one detail shorter than other, and I mean like by a few millimeters, which is totally normal, then it is much easier to even out the hemline. Serge or sew. If you are using a serger, be extremely careful with the pins. Never ever let the pins go under the knife. At the best it will ruin the knife, but you are risking that the pins might break and fly around. This is one of the most dangerous things in sewing. Press the seams towards the back panel. Take the front binding tape and lay the right side on the wrong side of the dress. Pin it along the front neckline. Yes, this binding tape is longer than the actual neckline and it's with an intention that you don't have to stress about matching the length. We will cut the excessive part off later. Stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. Press the seam allowance towards the binding tape. Fold the upper edge of binding tape towards the edge of seam allowance. Press. Now fold it again in a way that raw edges are hidden inside and the folded edge is covering the previously made seam. Press. You can also stitch without pressing, but I find that this step makes the stitching much easier. By the way, I am using this plank to faster cool down the fabric. This helps to keep the shape. Make a stitch 1 mm apart from the folded edge, and while you are stitching, make sure that this folded edge is covering the previously made stitch. Take the back and armhole binding tape. Plus, this binding will also work as straps at the front. Find the middle point of this binding tape by folding it on half. Also find the middle point of the back panel. Pin these middle points together. The right side of the binding tape goes to the wrong side of the dress. Pin it to the back panel and the armhole area. Stitch 5 mm apart from the edge. You can likely stretch the binding tape where the line around armholes is more curved. Press the seam allowance towards the binding tape. Take the unstitched part and fold it on half. Press. Use this pressed line as a guideline. Fold the raw edges towards the middle line. Press. Some fabrics stay in the place better than the others. This just wasn't my lucky day. Fold again so the folded edges are together and press one more time. Do the step for both front straps. Finish the back binding by folding the raw edge towards the seam allowance and pressing it down. Work here the same way as we did for the front binding. Start stitching from the end of the strap 1 mm apart from the folded edges. Take your time and adjust the strap as you sew. Ideally, you could make this as a one continuous stitch starting from the strap along the back binding and then going to the other strap. But I grabbed the wrong strap and that's totally fine. I will simply start a new stitch from the other side. It is normal that the straps look wavy. The sewing machine has a tendency to stretch them. Use an iron to press them flat. Also press the armhole and back binding. Take both back strap details and fold them in half and press. Basically work the exact same way as you did for the front straps. Make a stitch 1 mm apart from the folded edges. Do the step for both back straps. Press them flat. Take one ending of the strap and lay it against the markings at the back. If you want to keep it very simple, you can stitch them on exactly like this. Yes, there is a raw edge, but if you have a similar fabric, it will not tear. Another way would be to place the raw edge towards the binding tape. Stitch along the previously made seam. Fold the strap upwards and stitch it again on the binding tape. Use a straight stitch and back stitch. Do a quick try-on if you are not sure about the length. Also, to clarify, this was the second sample of the dress and the final pattern isn't as tight around the knees. You can also think how long you want the straps and feel free to shorten them. If you will tie a bow on your shoulders, this length should be perfect. But if you want to tie them as I did here, then you might want to shorten them. Simply cut off the excessive amount and you can tie knots at the ends. We are so close to the finish line. Neaten the bottom hem. Make sure that this neatening stitch isn't too tight to avoid popping stitches. I will not hide the serger's threads inside the stitch because we will stitch over it, but I still left them a bit longer. Then I pull a few threads and the serger's stitch gathers in a knot. Then I cut off the hanging threads. If you want to, you can give a quick press to flatten out the neatened hem. Use a soap and a ruler to mark around the hem allowance, which is 2.5 centimeters. I leave these markings on the right side of the fabric. Fold the hem allowance towards inside and pin. Make sure that the marked line stays exactly on the edge. Take the regular needle with the thread in a different color. Hand stitch exactly at the middle of the neatening stitch. This stitch will help us to keep together the hem allowance and it will work as a guideline for us when we will use the twin needle. So take your time and try to be very precise. When it comes to settings for the twin needle, simply place it inside the sewing machine as the regular needle. You will need to place 2 spools of thread on top of your sewing machine. Then thread your sewing machine with both threads as you would do with one thread, except before the needle there should be 2 hooks where to place the thread. One where you regularly put the thread and another on the right side. Some machines don't have the hook on the right side, then simply use the left hook for both threads and then put each thread in separate needles. If the hem looks like a big bump, you might want to use less tension for the upper threads. However, if you will put very low tension here, then the stitch itself will look bumpy, so you will have to look for a compromise. Be aware that the hem will look a little uneven anyways, and we will fix it by simply pressing it. Otherwise, I will use the regular settings, except I will not use the backstitch. The stitch length should be around 3. Make a stitch in a way that the hand stitch goes exactly between both needles. Instead of using a backstitch, I will simply stitch a few stitches over the previous ones. Take out the thread of the hand stitch. For such cases, I always use pliers. Carefully press the hem and you have finished. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please leave us a like and subscribe to our channel for more sewing and knitting tutorials. Bye!